Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
What's up, Ben?
I just came out of a yawn. It was good timing.
Yeah, that was good. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, Ben?
That is affirmative, Tom.
How was your weekend?
Super busy. Whitney was out of town all week, so it was just me and the boys with Weston's football, all that going on. It's a lot, man. Being a single parent would be not easy.
No.
Not at all.
Definitely not. Makes you grateful for what you have, right?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely for sure.
Well, we went to Melbourne, and Levi went surfing, and the waves were pretty big, a little aggressive for him. He did go out there, though. He was able to ride a few, but, man, it was pretty aggressive, I would say.
You got to take him to Cocoa Beach Pier.
Okay.
There's something about the way that, like, Jetty Park is north of there, like where the space shuttle takes off, stuff like that. And the waves are always, like, small and manageable. It's shallow. It'd be a good spot for you to take them. And it's, like, kind of like a historic surfing spot. It's really not a great surfing spot for people that actually surf.
Yeah.
But it's a great place to learn. They have, like, the Easter longboard classic stuff, like right by Ron John Surf Shop, all that. It's cool.
Ron John's awesome.
Did you go this time?
Yeah, we go every time we go up there.
All right.
It's kind of worn out its novelty, I guess, because we've been there 4 or 5 times now.
Yeah. Did you get a surfboard?
No, I was going to, and we stopped at this surf shop, but he didn't seem too excited about it, so I wasn't going to drop $400 on a surfboard, you know?
Yeah.
I want to see if it's actually something that he's going to take to before I.
Yeah.
And even then, I can find something used probably for half the price. I mean,
boards run about that.
I mean, it's a piece of foam. The soft top ones.
Don't disrespect surfboards, Tom.
Sorry.
It's a piece of foam.
It is. That's all it is. With a fancy wrapper on it.
That was master crafted into a specific shape to be one with the water.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real masterful. Yeah, so it was fun. It was good to get away. We were there for about 3 days total. 4 days for 4 days, 3 nights. So, but glad to be back. Nothing new in my world. Something that we wanted to bring up today was what you do when your loved one doesn't want to go to treatment or doesn't want to get help. And this is something that we've run into a couple of times over the past few weeks, and Ben and I thought it would be a good idea to bring this up and kind of the discussions that we have with parents and loved ones, because as you know, up to this point, if you've been listening for any amount of time, Ben and I run Rock Recovery Center, and so this is obviously a point of contention for a lot of parents and loved ones. They don't know what to do or how to handle the situation whenever their loved one doesn't actually want to get the help. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to bring it up. And, again, it's not something that we haven't talked about in the past, but, outside of listening to every single episode that we've recorded, we like to bring this stuff up every now and again. So, Ben, why don't you start us off? Why don't you give us an example of what we're talking about when, somebody just doesn't want to go to treatment? Use a phone call that you would field, that you would take, and kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, definitely. So this last, I would say, couple months, I've been working with the family, and obviously I won't give intimate details on the situation, but just in a roundabout way, I'll explain it. So there is a young man who has been drinking and using cocaine. One of his friends, about probably month and a half ago, I would guess, actually got some cocaine with that ended up having fentanyl in it, and he overdosed and died. This is the kid's best friend. So the parents got pretty darn concerned, but it seems like this has been going on for quite a while. I did speak with the son, and our initial phone call again was 2 months ago. You know, oh, we need to get him into some sort of program. We're finding liquor and other substances hidden under his bed, empty cans, etc. Like all the telltales are there. And at that time, it was like he was on his way. I thought, like, okay, this is it. This guy, it was pretty simple. He's coming to get help. I received a phone call from the family the next day, like, oh, he's just not interested in going. And just to kind of paint a picture, this young man is attending, if I understand correctly, he's got some college classes at the community college where he lives, living at home with mom and dad, unemployed, and I guess in the previous semester of school would say he was going to class, but basically hasn't, and actually dropped classes, said this semester would be different. But bottom line is mom and dad had got him to agree to go, if I understand correctly. And then last second, he says, no, things will be different really soon. Just let me enroll in this semester of school again, and we'll give it another shot. Well, I just got another call from them. So this is like probably the third or fourth time that I've had conversations that are like, nothing's changing with the situation. He keeps saying things are going to be different. And I guess what I kind of want to get at is what cards do parents or loved ones hold to kind of push the situation forward? And we always got to look, the word that gets brought up all the time, and we can't have this episode without mentioning it, enabling. In what way can we make the situation uncomfortable for the addict or alcoholic? And if we break down the situation that I just explained, why would this individual want to seek treatment or get help at all? Do you see any reason in what I explained, Tom, on why there would be any motivation to get help?
Well, right. And I agree 100% with what you're saying, but I would say before we even get to that point and I reference those as leverage points, and you referenced them as what cards do the parents hold or the loved ones hold. Same thing. When I say what leverage points do you have, what do you have that you can hold over their head, to more forcefully put them in a position to seek treatment. But I think before we even get to that point, what I want to challenge parents and loved ones to do, and I even tell them this over the phone, what is it that is, I want you to really think about the situation and put yourself in the shoes of another parent that is calling you.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. And put yourself in, let's just say that your loved one is a drug addict and an alcoholic and all the things, and they're in recovery. Your son or daughter is now sober, and your sister calls you and they have the same exact situation. What would be the advice that you would give your sister who has a son that's doing the same exact thing? And a lot of times, and you'll get the awkward pause. They won't say anything, and then they'll think, "Yeah, you're right. The exact opposite of what I'm doing is what I would recommend." And it gets them to jog their memory. So I always want parents and loved ones to think and try and see things in a way of, because they oftentimes think that they're helping the situation, when if they can actually pause and think about it for just a brief second, they'll quickly realize, no, I'm actually making this situation a lot worse. And once they can identify that, then we can get into the steps of, okay, what are the leverage points? What are the things that you can do as a parent, as a loved one, to help further this process along? Because until a parent or a loved one is able to identify the fact that they're making things maybe not necessarily worse, but most of the times they are making it worse, or they're not making any sort of progress, it's a stalemate. Nobody is going to be receiving any sort of help at all. And so it's important that they can see that.
And the longer the pattern goes on, too, the deeper the claws get, especially when you're dealing with younger people. You know, there is a big difference between somebody that's been drinking alcoholically for 10 years and somebody a year. The amount of change and damage to the body, etc. Like, if I were to do my best to role play this call in particular would have been like, hey, Tom, my son Georgie, he's enrolled in college. However, last semester he had to drop out of his classes because he wasn't making it. I keep finding empty beer cans and liquor bottles and little empty bags of cocaine all throughout his room. He asked to sign up for another semester of school, so I'd give him another chance. I'm still finding these baggies all over the place, empty beer cans under the bed. And, you know, it's crazy, Tom. I'm like his alarm clock. He doesn't even set his alarm to go to classes. And, you know, I gave him this chance, and nothing's changing. That's literally how this conversation has gone down for the last 2 months. It's been the same conversation over and over again. And it's getting to the point where you got to ask the parents, like, okay, what part are you playing in this? And when it comes down to the comfortability of the situation, like, I don't see a reason for that individual to change. Mom and dad are providing everything for me. I got a roof over my head, food in my belly. I get to say that I'm going to college. They're somehow financially, whether they know it or not, providing me with this booze because I'm unemployed. Like, what needs to change?
Right.
Nothing.
Well, and then because we get this question a lot all the time too, or not even a question, but and I think I referenced this a few podcasts ago. We hear a lot, well, if they don't want to get clean and sober, then what's the point in even trying to get them to go to treatment or whatever the case is? And my response is that 90% of the people that walk into these doors aren't necessarily coming in here like excited about being in treatment. A lot of them don't want to be done, but the consequences have become great enough to where they're forced into a position of having to change. And so when you have somebody that is positioned themselves to where every aspect of their lives, whatever, is falling apart, and the only thing that is still somewhat held together is by way of you parents or loved ones allowing this to stay together, like, at this point, you're at fault. Everything external, and I'll use myself as an example. I did all the same stuff that this hypothetical young man has done. And this was me at 26 years old. I was living at home with my dad. I had no bills, really, I had to pay. I had a job that, you know, I was a car mechanic, and I was enabled even through that, because my dad had been there 30 years. He was the lead technician there. And, you know, there was drunk me, but they didn't want to really put the hammer down on me because, you know, my dad was there for a long time. So they always brushed things under the rug. All my relationships were destroyed. I was physically dependent on alcohol. You know, I had wrecked all of my cars. I had no money to my name. I was to the point where I was literally running tabs on the bar and saying, hey, I'll pay my tab on payday. You know, so every aspect of my life was falling apart. And the only thing that allowed me to keep things together was all the enablers in my life, which was my employer and my father. You know, my dad gave me a roof over my head, and my job gave me a paycheck. Even though I was terrible at my job, they still gave me a paycheck. And it wasn't until those two things stopped that is when I got the help. My dad said, listen, I don't care where you go, you just can't stay here. In my job, they finally said, you're way too much of a liability. You're no longer employed here.
I want to touch on some. I don't think I've ever expressed this ever in the history of the podcast. So I've coached football, young kids, junior football from, I think I started with at one point 8, 9-year-olds, and last time I coached they were 11 and 12. But one thing you know as a coach, if you've participated in anything or maybe been a teacher, you can't coach all kids the same, right? Like I can't deal with one player exactly the same. They all have different temperaments, different personalities. One thing I want to throw out there is, in no way, shape, or form has this family failed, so to speak. And the reason that I say that is they actually have a son. I'm not sure if he's slightly older or slightly younger, but they are close in age. Obviously, these two boys were raised under the same roof. They just took one up to somewhere in the Northeast who got himself into some sort of Ivy League school. Whether he's a year younger, a year older, same opportunities. The family is clearly a very good example of how to be a human being. You know, they're quote-unquote successful, they're polite, they're well-spoken, they're educated, they've obviously made lives for themselves. Their other son is taking the environment that he grew up in, and it seems like flourishing. Yet they have their other son who's gone the complete opposite direction. So I kind of want to throw it out there that I don't blame the family, so to speak, because how do you end up with one successful son with all the opportunity that you provided and then one that's just gone off the wrong way? It goes back to those 3 C's that our therapist always talks about. Can't control it, can't cure it. What's the third one?
And you didn't cause it.
And you didn't cause it. So I wanted to bring that up because you're not necessarily, as a family, specifically in this example, failing or you haven't done anything wrong. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to adjust your approach. Just because it worked with one of your sons doesn't mean it's going to work with the other. The other son is well on his way to having a good, fruitful life, while you got the other one that's literally going nowhere. And you could say digressing, regressing. Which one is it? Going backwards.
Yeah.
You know, so what's the difference there? And again, the reason I bring this up, you got 2 boys very similar in age. One taken off and the other one is found himself in this addiction thing. You can't coach all kids the same. So what are we going to do to take a step back and say, hey, what can I do differently for my other son because what worked for the other one isn't working for him?
Yeah. So I think now's a good time to get into the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, at this point, as a parent, as a loved one, I'm assuming, and we're going to assume for the sake of this episode, that you are to the point where the gig's up, I guess. They need to go somewhere, and you at this point have identified that you can't help the situation. And the way that you've identified that is you sought wise counsel from other people, whether that's myself and Ben or your neighbor who had a son or daughter going through the same thing that now has sobriety. You found out through Al-Anon, whatever the case is, you have now identified that you are not helping the situation and you need to seek outside counsel. And so when parents and loved ones call Ben and myself in these situations and they have somebody that needs to get help, but they are fearful that they're just going to decline, we're going to go back to, okay, well, I'll give you the examples of what I share with parents and loved ones in particular. If I receive a phone call, the very first phone call, I always ask them, well, has your son or daughter or whoever, and this, we're saying son and daughter, but this can be referenced in terms of spouses and other stuff too, and just loved ones. Is this their first time seeking out treatment? Okay. And I'll get that answer, yes, it is. And no, it's not. If it's yes, it is, I will have a slightly different approach than if it's no, it's not. Okay, they've been in treatment before. How many times have they been in treatment before? 5 times. As a matter of fact, Ben, let's role play this.
Let's do it.
All right, so you call me. Ring, ring. Hello, this is Tom. How can I help you?
Hey, Tom, what's happening, my man? I'm not the best role-play guy, but...
What's your name?
My name's Ben.
Ben, how you doing? I'm Tom. How can I help you?
Yeah, I'm calling to get some information about treatment, what to do, next steps. I got a son that's really struggling.
Oh, really?
Seems like, yeah.
How old's your son?
He is 26.
26 years old. How long's he been drinking? You said it's drinking, right? Or is it drugs?
A little bit of both. Mostly drinking, but there's some drugs sprinkled in there.
Yeah. That's not surprising. It's 2023.
Yep, exactly.
So what would you say he's been using the most of?
Again, primarily alcohol, but I think he's an equal opportunity user. Like if somebody has a Xanax or something like that, or a pain pill like a Vicodin,
right.
Maybe a little bit of cocaine. He's told me a couple of little things he's done, but again, primarily alcohol. But it seems like if somebody has something at a party or whatever the case is, out at the bar, he'll give it a go.
So Ben, let me ask you something. What's that? What prompted you to pick up the phone and call me?
I just don't know how to get him to change and to see that he has a problem. He's hanging on to a job he has at a restaurant as a server, and he's living with me, and he sleeps all day and goes to work, but then comes home the wee hours of the morning, and it's on repeat. If he's not at his job at the restaurant, he's out partying or he's in bed.
Yeah.
And this restaurant stuff, it's the place he's at is not the best atmosphere. It's part of the problem.
Right. And have you tried? You said that you feel like he doesn't want to make a change, or that you don't think you can get him to make the change. Have you tried before?
Yeah, I've asked him to consider maybe switching jobs. I've asked him to come straight home after a shift, and it's always, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And he never ends up doing it.
And so does he get angry? Like, have you talked to him about like potentially his issues in terms of substance abuse or?
Yeah, I've told him he drinks too much, and it's concerning that he's using other things, especially nowadays. You never know what's in it.
And how's he receive that whenever you say those sorts of things?
He tells me that his intentions are good and that he has it under control, and if he wanted to stop, he would.
Has he ever tried stopping before?
No, other than just, I think, telling me he will to appease the conversation.
So this is really the first time that he's seeking treatment? Or
yes.
That you're seeking treatment, I suppose?
Yeah.
And so, Ben, let me ask you something. What is the ideal outcome for your son?
That he gets his life in order.
Mm-hmm.
It's I would like to see him. He's 26 years old. He is, for the time being, stuck under my roof with no options. His job is dead end. He spends all his money out at the bar after a shift, and he's going nowhere.
Yeah. And so you want him to get his life in order, which I understand that. I mean, being a parent, every parent wants their child to get their life in order. What do you think happens if things stay the way that they are?
Where he's 50 years old and still living under my roof.
Would you allow that?
In theory, no.
In theory, no.
He's my son. How could I throw him out?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I would ask the same thing to you. Do you want him living under your roof at 50 years old?
I don't.
So, we'll have to take some steps forward to ensure that he gets the help. But here's the thing, Ben. This is his first time going in treatment. So there's a way to go about this to hopefully get him to see the opportunity that lies ahead of him to seek treatment. Now, if you called me and you said that this is he's been to treatment 10 times in the past, then this conversation's different. And the way that the conversation would go is, well, Ben, why is he at your house still? You know, if he's been in treatment 10 times before, but he's still underneath your roof, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a different dynamic there, but considering this is first time in treatment, you know, we can kind of treat this with kid gloves a little bit because reality is you don't know. And I think you would agree, right? Hence why you called me.
I have no idea what to do at this point.
And he doesn't know either. And most alcoholics, most drug addicts, they don't know. They're the last ones really to know. All the family and everybody, the people around them know well before they do. So it's going to be our job to help them see and identify the problems that they have in their life. And are you willing to go on that journey with me?
I am. How is it that he doesn't recognize that he needs to get his S together?
His S? What's his S?
Shit.
Well, because he's an addict. He's an addict. You know, Ben, listen, I was, and I don't share this with people unless I actually feel that it's appropriate and that it will help the overall cause. But I was in this situation many years ago and I didn't know. And it wasn't until, you know, everything got pulled out from underneath me is when I was willing to make a change. And that's something that probably is going to happen for your son. But reality is he's got it together.
So let me ask you this, Tom. What would the next steps be for me to get him to your place?
Well, I think that there's probably a more in-depth conversation that you and I need to have. I want to know more specifics from your perspective on what's going on with your son. And then from there, we can find out the resources and the length of time, and I can give you different treatment options, stuff like that. But also, I think that you're going to have a conversation with your son, and I'm going to walk you through that, and I'll get involved if I need to. But I personally don't want to get involved unless I absolutely have to, because remember, we don't want to force this on them. We want them to try and be able to we want them to buy into this idea. So I'm going to give you some tactics and some things to do to maybe help that along. And in the end, if he's still reluctant and doesn't want to go, then you pull in the big guns and I'll come and help you.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So you want to have this conversation now, or let's schedule it for another time? You tell me.
Let's have it right now.
All right. We're not having that conversation right now, but that's kind of how that would go when we would receive a phone call. And from there, Ben and I will get more specifics on the situation. Now, if this is somebody that's been to treatment multiple times, this is where, or let's just say they're reluctant to going and getting help. I'm going to say, what are the leverage points? Okay. So let's just role play again real quick. All right, Ben, and we're just going to say that you've had this conversation. Everything has gone not good, and he still doesn't want to go to treatment. All right, Ben, so you had the conversation with your son, Frank. What'd you say his name was? Georgie. Did
I say that?
Yeah.
Well, it's Georgie now. So.
Okay. So, Ben, you had the conversation with Georgie. It didn't go so well, huh?
No, he did the same thing that he always does. He says he'll start doing better.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but hey, listen, it happens, and now we're going to navigate it. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to think of leverage points. When I say leverage points, Ben, what do you think of?
Well, I think the easiest thing is stuff that I'm tired of.
Be more specific.
I'm paying for all his groceries because he spends all his money. I'm paying his car insurance. I had to help him with his car payment a couple times. He's not contributing around the house at all.
Is it just you two living there?
It's just us two.
Okay. So he doesn't do anything, really, it sounds like.
Nothing. Nothing.
That's got to be frustrating.
It really is.
So when I say leverage points, Ben, these are the exact things that I'm talking about, because left to his own devices, if you removed all of that stuff, what do you think would happen?
Oh, well, he would lose his car. He wouldn't be able to drive legally.
Yeah.
If I'm paying his car insurance, it's and he's already got a DUI. It's cost me $500 a month.
Who's the car under, his name or your name?
I co-signed for it.
Okay, so you co-signed for it, so, and you pay the insurance. You pay a cell phone bill.
Yeah, I pay a cell phone bill.
Does he pay for anything, Ben?
At this point, no.
So what's he do with his money?
Spends it at the bar.
Yeah. So
and Uber Eats.
Uber Eats to your house?
Yep.
Does he get you a meal?
No.
Oh,
that'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be, but what are you going to do? So, Ben, I'm going to make some suggestions, and, these oftentimes for parents, and I've had thousands of conversations up to this point with parents, these things can be very difficult to do, but I'm here to tell you that until you're willing to do these things aren't going to change. And the conversation that you and I had before, you want him to change. You don't want him living underneath your roof when he's 50 years old, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you willing to do the things that I'm about to ask you to do?
Well, let's see what extremes you're taking.
Are you willing to do the things that I'm about to ask you to do?
Yes, Tom.
Okay.
White flag, surrender.
Stop paying for stuff. Hands down, that has to stop today. Okay? Can you do that?
I can do that, Tom.
Ben, what do you do for work?
I don't know. What's a good job?
You're an engineer.
I'm an engineer.
All right. Good. So you make a decent living for yourself. How much a month do you think you're spending on your son?
Ooh, I've never sat down and added that up.
Well, it might be a good idea. What do you think? Give me an estimate.
I mean, if I include the fact that he lives with me, if he paid even a portion of that, probably $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
$1,500 to $2,000 a month. Have you ever? What do you think of when you hear that?
What's he do with his money?
You angry?
That's what comes to mind. Yeah.
Resentful.
There we go.
Yeah. So I want you to really think about that, Ben. You're basically giving him $1,500 to $2,000 a month to go out drinking and to go out using drugs.
No, I'm not.
Ben?
I have never handed him cash to go drink.
I know you haven't handed him cash, but let me explain how drug addicts and alcoholics work. You may not hand him $1,500 and say, here, go buy a bunch of booze and a bunch of cocaine and I'll see you later. But what you are doing is you're paying for things that frees up the funds for him to use his money on those things. And if he's anything like an alcoholic and a drug addict like myself, any extra money that I had, that's what I used it for. So I didn't pay for things. I had a very similar situation to your son. I lived at home. I didn't pay any of the mortgage. I didn't pay anything for my groceries. I didn't pay for my car insurance, stuff like that. But do you think I just took that money and put it in a high yield savings account somewhere? No. So my dad didn't hand me $1,500 a month, but he did give me the opportunity to take the extra money and spend it on booze and on drugs. I know you would never do that. You would never intentionally hand him those funds to go and use, but ultimately that's what's happening. So that's the first thing. I need you to stop that. Can you do that, Ben?
Ouch, Tom.
You called me, Ben.
Some harsh words.
Ben, you called me.
I can stop that.
All right. We're going to start there. I'm not going to tell you to throw your son out of your house today. But what I am going to ask you to do is have a conversation with your son around this, and you need to draw this boundary, and you need to do it today. And what I'm hopeful for is that he will come to the realization that he can't do this anymore. Now, simultaneously, while you're having this conversation with your son, and we'll see how that pans out, you and I are going to come up with some resources in terms of what treatment options he's going to have available to him. Because as soon as he does say yes, Because remember, you're starting to pull the rug out from underneath of him whenever he does say yes, because he doesn't want to fall flat on his face. You and I need to have a plan put in place.
But Tom, I'm just thinking this is going to ruin his credit.
Oh God. You had to go there.
Well, they always
all right. We're not
do.
role playing anymore, but that is something that we hear a lot of. Is you're going to ruin their credit.
Here's the thing, and since we're not role playing anymore on that, because we do get that rebuttal, where parents, loved ones, whatever, they're trying to protect their loved one from consequences. Those consequences are either coming now or they're coming later. Whether you assist in bringing them forward before it gets way out of hand, or they're self-imposed by the alcoholic addict later, they tend to be more severe later. So the longer we let this drag on, the more severe the consequences are likely going to be. It's not what's the saying? It's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
So we can either, I think a big part of doing these interventions is moving the date line up. Let's bring the consequences that are going to be coming. Let's move that timeline forward. How do we move that forward? You're not necessarily going at them and hurting them. You are moving forward the inevitable, I think, is one of the best ways to be able to explain it to a loved one. They're like, oh my God, how can you ask me to do that? They're going to fall flat on their face. You let this go on for another 15 years, and the situation will be worse.
Or 15 weeks, for that matter,
Yeah.
15 days.
We've seen that.
Yeah.
Actually, if you listen to some of our past episodes with some of our past clients, their parents, you'll hear that they had a conversation with myself or Tom, and a month later they're calling because their son or daughter is on a ventilator at the hospital.
Yeah.
We've literally had episodes on that. So think of it as, again, I reiterate, you're moving these consequences up where they're most likely going to be less severe than if you just wait this stuff out. Or, like the example we were given in the role play. Now I got a kid that's 50 years old living under my roof. Because I'm going to go ahead and say this. We get clients here that are over the age of 50 who are still living under their parents' roof, whose parents still pay their car insurance. I am not exaggerating.
Yeah.
And the parents are like 80, 85 years old. And it's the saddest thing because they're saying to me or Tom on the phone, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to be here much longer. I don't have the ability to do, or the energy, the physical capability to do what I used to do. And that's what happens when we enable and we don't push that timeline forward.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, fortunate for us, we don't see that all too often. But man, when you do see that, it's really, really sad.
Well, you sure we don't see it that often?
I mean, over 50 still living underneath her. I mean, that's a very specific. I don't know. I mean, we see it more. Listen, one's too many.
All right,
in the
fair
end,
enough.
I mean,
because I was going to say, like, I can name one in our care right now, which obviously I'm not going to do. And I can name one that was in our care just prior to that person coming in.
It could be safe to say that we have one with every community that we have.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. And what it is, it's a learned helplessness is really what it boils down to. They've always gone through life without having the need to work, really.
Have we ever brought that terminology up, learned helplessness, on the podcast? I
mean, I'm sure at some point,
I felt like there was, because sometimes these things come in waves. There was a community that we had not long ago where there were several clients.
Yeah.
Where it was above average, where we're sitting with the therapist, and the therapists are like, there is so much learned helplessness in these situations right now. And is there a remedy and a solution for it? Absolutely. But I found it interesting but you go back to learned helplessness generally comes from enabling.
Yeah, they've gone through life without having to really do much, to get by. Parents have always came in and saved the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not placing blame on the parents, it is what it is, but it's partially placing blame on the parents.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to call it what it is, Ben.
We do.
We call balls and strikes here, as Stevie Buckets would say. Which that last episode we did was pretty funny. I listened to it.
Did you?
Yeah, it was funny. So anyways, let's wrap this up. If somebody doesn't want to go to treatment, there's things to do. The first thing that I would make any suggestion, if you're listening to this and you have somebody in your life right now that you've listened to this episode and you're like, this resonates with me so much, reach out. That's the number one thing that you can do. Do not try and go about this yourself, because it's a lot. And just the same as I wouldn't try and go through, like right now, I'm going through some things with my son with just behavioral stuff. I'm not going to try and pretend like I know what I'm doing to fix it, because I can't. I don't know. I'm seeking wise counsel to help me navigate this situation. So this is something that you have to do for yourself. And I think that's the first thing that you can do that is a tangible takeaway from this episode, is seek wise counsel, whether that's from us or from somebody else or somebody through your church or a support group or whatever the case is. You have to do that and let them or whoever that is help you navigate this situation. And, you'll be okay, but you can't, what do you say, Ben? We're not in the results business. We're in the business of showing up.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome may not be what you want it to be. That's the truth. That's the harsh reality. You may want something so bad and only to find out that the outcome isn't what you want it to be. Doesn't mean that you failed. Doesn't mean that you didn't do your part. Just, it's
God,
just
let me
the way
say
it is.
something to that, because obviously being in the field as long as we have, we've seen situations like that, and where loved ones, parents, whatever, husbands, spouses, they've done every step the right way, and the outcome ended up not being what they had hoped. The benefit to that is that there is a level of peace that can be achieved from the loved one, knowing that they did everything that they could. Yeah. If the outcome is not ideal, and you know that you didn't do what you could have done, then it's hard to find peace in that. But I know several cases off the top of my head where the outcome wasn't what the families had hoped. However, I'm still in touch with those families, and they say, I know I've done everything. Mm-hmm. I've given my loved one, my kid, whoever, every opportunity to get sober, to turn their life around, to do this. And at this point, it's on them. Yeah. I've done everything correctly.
It's a freeing place to be when you can look in the mirror and say that.
Yeah.
It really is. So, all right, Ben, that's it. Any final thoughts? You good?
No final thoughts.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. And in the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes, sir.
That is it. We will see y'all later.